Hi, this is Joe Speaks Truth. Just 3 years ago, New York City was placed under the harshest lockdowns out of the whole country. While things seem that they're going back to normal, I want to invite you all to listen to the untold stories of the many New Yorkers that had to survive lockdowns and vaccine mandates. Hello, this is Joe Speaks Truth, and today I have Juju, who is working as a visual merchandising in fashion retail, and she had also done some acting. The reason why I have Juju here today is because we want to talk about everything that has been happening in the world, and especially New York City since 2020. Regarding the mask and the vaccine mandates, and because Juju, she wears a hearing aid, and having to put on the mask affected her community, and as well as affected her way to be able to communicate. So I want to welcome you here today, Juju.
Hi.
So I first want to ask you, how was your personal and private life? Well, personal and private is the same thing. What I mean to say, how was your personal and working life before 2020?
I was doing visual merchandising, working in retail, fashion, helping the brand, through marketing and branding, product presentation, all those things. Also with acting too. I was actually doing understudy with for Colored Girls. It was off Broadway. Before it actually became on Broadway. So yeah, we're doing a little acting.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
So when they announced that there was a global pandemic, what were you thinking at that time?
Well, I always, knew, don't believe everything you hear. And for me, it was, kind of like skeptical, like, okay, there's a virus that's happening. They're about to do a lockdown. And it was questionable. I said, okay, how many times have we had so many of media, talking about viruses, the spreading, like the Ebola and all those things that we've had in history. And, hearing media, giving misinformation, giving misinterpretations. So I didn't believe everything, just questionable, like, okay, what does that mean? I didn't really, yeah.
So when they said that the world had to be shut down and we had the lockdowns, how was that for you? How were you able to cope with that?
When that happened in March, I know one thing was my brother was going to come and visit me. And I told him, I said, you know what, don't come because they're talking about locking down everything. And he was like, no, I'm still coming. So I guess when he came and visited, and I didn't see anything, no consequences from that. I was just like, okay. I didn't know how to cope with it. Like, what are they talking about by lockdowns? What did that mean? My job, that's when it hit. When my job was like, we're going to, you're not going to be working anymore right now. We're going to put you on furlough. I said, oh, so this is serious. So that means that I went on furlough for my job. We had to get on unemployment. And, for me, I still went outside. I still went outside. I didn't even wear the mask. That was like March and April. I didn't even wear the mask. I went outside. I'm seeing people actually wear masks. And I'm like, is this serious? I still couldn't get it. And I think maybe when I even went to a doctor's appointment with my mom in April 2020, I think. Yeah, it was 2020. And that was in Philadelphia. And they wasn't really mandating. So I was like, okay, well, maybe it's a choice thing because I'm not wearing it. It didn't make sense to me because communication. Like, I was like, if I'm going to communicate, how is that going to work? So it was still questionable, and it just didn't make sense to me. I was like, there's no way they was going to let us wear this mask through, the whole whatever. I actually thought they was going to end in June. I thought, okay, this is temporary. This is nothing, But yeah, I mean, after that, I was just like, I couldn't get, like, it just didn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm. So, talking about the mask, right? You wear a hearing aid, correct? So you get most of your feedback, or part of your feedback is through reading lips, right? So how was that for you? Because they said it was only going to be 2 weeks to slow down the spread. Eventually, you know, over time, they came in with the mask mandates, and people were getting really nasty. There was a lot of paranoia. People were getting denied service from restaurants here. To walk in, you had to have the mask on, but to sit down, as soon as you sit down, COVID was so smart. It's just no, hey, pause, I'm eating. I cannot spread through, as I'm eating and talking to you, or whatever the case might be. So how were you able to cope with that? Because I'm pretty sure you were denied service. And did people even offer any empathy or compassion? Even after you explained to them, hey, I have a hearing aid. I need to see and read lips. And I feel like you shouldn't even have to explain that. It's just a no is a no. You don't want to wear a mask, period. But in your case, it was not just about you wearing the mask, but it was also about people wearing the mask, right? So how was that? Because it's been years and there's still people wearing the mask in 2023.
Yes, like going to the supermarket. Again, you know, I didn't even like wear the mask. I wore a covering, like, but just to get into the market. But like you said, it was the challenge where people were in. And I would tell them, like, I don't understand you. I have to read your lips. And their thing is, well, I can't because it's COVID. So that was the frustration. Where I said, okay, you know what? Then if we can't communicate here, then I am going to stand for my right to just continue to get service. Whether I'm going to go shopping, food shopping, or go to the post office, go to a restaurant, still having to confront with people that don't want to take their mask down. I would ask them to write them. I said, okay, yeah, write or text. They're willing to do that. But the problem is, it's not consistent. They say, okay, I'll write and I'll text, and you still talking. I'm saying, I don't understand you talking while you it's either you're going to text and write, or you're going to take your mask down and talk. It's either way. I have to have clarity. Their thinking is, because I can hear, you can pretty much hear me clearly, you can talk. There's a lot of misunderstanding, misconception about deaf people, and that deaf people that can talk and hear, oh, well, we don't have to reasonably accommodate you because you can hear. And I'm saying, okay, but that's not it. So it's a lot, and it's called autism, AUDISM. Autism means discrimination against a deaf person. When you are assuming that a person like me, she's not deaf, she can hear, she's fine. Those are the things that I face a lot, and it's very frustrating. It's tolerating too, because it's like, okay, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to find my way to do what I have to do through this situation.
Wow. Wow. That seems like a lot to deal with because, in my case, I'm not in the same situation as you, right? And just hearing you say that makes me like have empathy and compassion towards you. But I'm pretty sure a lot of people were just like, whatever, I don't care. You figure it out. And I'm pretty sure you got nasty responses sometimes. And there were situations where you did get into verbal altercations, right? I think on the bus, correct?
Yes.
How was that? Can you talk about that?
Oh, yes. Like taking the train, going to Philadelphia, coming back, or like you said, the bus in New Jersey. Oh, my God, that one. That was a hard one because this was in the middle of the night. Okay, this is the middle of the night where I'm coming from New Jersey going back to New York. And I'm getting on the bus. And this is like maybe 10:30, almost the last bus, I think. And of course, the bus driver put on your mask. I said, I decline. I don't have to because I stood for my rights. I know my rights, ADAs, civil rights. We know all those things. It's very important, especially as a deaf person. I've fought with my ADA rights for years. So I'm very aware, like, I don't have to partake in that medical intervention or these medical masks. It's not the law. And he had an attitude and called the cops on me. So
hold on. This is after you told him.
after I told him that,
First you declined the mask, and then it escalated, and then you explained to the individual that you have a hearing aid.
well, I told him that, I think he had his mask on, and I said, look, I can't understand you clearly. He was like, put your mask on. And I said, I decline. So that situation escalated, him calling the cops. Like, it doesn't matter. I don't
So then when you spoke to the cop, what happened?
When I spoke to the cop, this was not in the video, but this was before I recorded. I was trying to tell him, can you pull your mask down? And he didn't. This was it's one cop. He had his mask on.
So at one point, did you ever tell them, hey, I need to read lips in order to be able to have...
I just told him, and he just kept talking. He was like, wait a minute, let me just call. So it's kind of like ignore me. At that point, it's just like, sometimes, situations happen too. I get frustrated, like, okay, all right, whatever. I'm just going to still sit here. I'm not moving. And he called another cop to come in. Now, that other cop, he didn't have his mask on. So I was talking to him more because he didn't have his mask on. But the other one that had his mask on, I was just like, I don't understand him. I'm talking to you. But as you can see in the video, how that situation was going on with, them trying to figure out if they should kick me off the bus or not. And finally, they didn't. They left me alone, But sometimes in situations like that, again, it becomes like a choice of, do I have to keep trying to get you to take your mask and explain myself? That becomes very frustrating. I have to explain myself like I'm deaf, I can't hear you. I have to read your lips. There are times I just find other ways to try to explain it, because it's like explaining myself gets so much. It gets frustrating, it gets tiring. It's like, okay, you know what? I'm just not going to say nothing. I'm just going to sit here until I can see someone that I can communicate with. And those are the moments that I have, and yeah.
So you were experiencing that since 2020, 2021, 2022, and now things are, I guess, appear to be a little normal, or whatever the case might be, even though we still have people with masks on. But regarding your situation, what about other people that that are in the deaf community? How were they reacting to that? Like, did they feel the same way that you felt, or were they vocal about it like you were, or I guess the word that I'm trying to use for that, not vocal, were they as direct as you were about disliking the usage of mask?
No, I don't. From what I have been seeing, the deaf community using their social media, leaders using their platform, I didn't hear much about them speaking about it and speaking direct about it and sharing their stories and experience about this whole thing at all. No. And that's when it hit me, when I felt like, you know what, like, I felt the need that I had to, like, share my experience and speak about it. So they can see that, yes, this is very important, why it's inclusive. We're talking about a deaf community that has been fighting for many years with the ADA right. They have been fighting for reasonable accommodation and accessibility. Why are you not including this whole experience that's taken away and it's affecting our culture and community and the language itself? Because you're talking about a mask that takes away facial expression. That's the biggest part in language with the deaf community. So things like that that's taken away, it should become questionable, because what can happen then? How they're going to affect the culture in the community? No, I do have like maybe one friend. She have expressed and talked about her experience where I think she left her job and she started doing virtual. And so I think she started doing her own thing too, because she sent the effect of it. Yeah, she did have a small group on Telegram group. And there were some people that could express how they felt about it. But I don't think that a lot of them like use that platform a lot to be vocal about it and be direct about it and get uncomfortable and have a conversation about it. Like I wouldn't mind. it's still a sticky situation. I think the reason why is because when it comes to the deaf community, again, what I see, this is my opinion and this is my perspective, for the many years of them fighting. I'm not sure if you know, I'm going to explain this. 1988, Gayu at the Deaf College, they protest and they fought to have a deaf president because they had placed a hearing president for the college. And the deaf community, they went off. They said, no, we're not accepting this. It only took them 1 week to protest and fight. And they put demands and they got what they want. So that was history. And that right there told me, if you can do that, why are we not doing that now? To fight and stand up and protect and preserve your culture and your community and your language. The reason why I think that's not happening is because of the many years of fighting for reasonable accommodation, and we still are. Caption, having things, inclusiveness, having deaf people included in a lot of things. They're still fighting for that. So that is what creating opportunities, where they're looking at this as they're taking away opportunities if they speak up against it. It's fear.
Right.
It's fear for them. They're afraid of it. And I want to be a voice to say you don't have to be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to lose things. It's life. It's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be raw. Let's be honest about it. Why? Because you are dependent on a system and a government for too many years. That becomes toxic codependence.
Right.
And trauma bonding. Let's get out of that. And hold on and protect our community and culture better.
And it's funny that you said because they were fearful and they didn't want to lose certain things, so they lost. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you take away facial expressions, communication, you take away the person's individuality, you take away our empathy, our humanity, and you just make everyone look the same. But by putting on the mask on, because there's no identity on the person anymore. And if there's no identity, then we're all the same, but we're not meant to be the same. That's why we're all different. We look different. We have different voices, or whatever the case might be, different hair types, different noses, lips. It's for a reason, because that's the beauty in everything, that we're all so different, even though we're humans, right? And so it's just so sad to me that even in the deaf community, that, like you said, they have a history of advocating, right, for certain rights and to be able to integrate in society and to be able to understand. And because communication is such a powerful of way that, it's your voice, but it's also, like you say, your face. And sometimes before your mouth even speaks, your body and your facial expression speaks.
Yes.
What your lips can even say, or what your mind can even say, right? And so then you're putting on a mask to that. Okay, so how is the deaf community supposed to communicate now? And I noticed that even on the news, or whatever the case might be, there was not one person saying anything about that. Also with the children as well, like nobody said, okay, well, the masks are going to affect the development stages of children. And imagine like a child also that has, hearing disabilities. Okay, how are they even going to cope? And they're little and they already have barriers to communications. And now we're going to put an extra barrier with the mask on. And so honestly, I'm so glad that I got to meet you, because I feel like you being part of this freedom community was very helpful, because you brought a very different perspective that I honestly have to say, had I not met you, I don't think, well, I did work with children that were nonverbal, like in the schools, and I was saying like we need to, for them to have the ability to see faces, and we also need to be able to see their faces in order to recognize if there's something wrong with a child or if they need anything. But I think having met you, I think that was so important, because at times you even I think you brought somebody that was an interpreter for some of the rallies, because I wasn't even thinking about like, oh, let's have an interpreter. I wasn't even thinking about that. So I think you contributed so much with this situation, and you brought a different perspective that I wasn't even like. I was thinking about the children that I had worked with that were nonverbal, but I wasn't even thinking about adults or anything like that. I was just honestly, it really didn't cross my mind. So that's very interesting. That you came around and that you mentioned that others in your community they were just fearful to speak.
Yeah, and not only that, the interpreters too. There's an interpretive community that's a part of the deaf community that I also felt like they didn't speak up about it. Like you said, when you was having the rallies, I wanted to open that where getting interpreters to come so I can get the deaf community to come. But it seems like there was some reluctance with that too, because it was a conflict of interest. Their political views interfering with that.
But this wasn't even political, though. This wasn't even and
the effect of it,
exactly
affecting that to that's preventing information to be passed on.
Right.
That's really that needs to know what's going on. You know what I mean? So
because the rallies, we had people of different political parties.
Yes.
What happened to New York City and what happened to the world has nothing to do with Democrat and Republican. And I know some people might get triggered hearing this, and I don't care. It has to do because there are a group of people that they want to take over the world. And the way that they can do that is if they divide and conquer. That means Democrat versus Republican, mask and no mask, vaccine and no vaccine.
Yes.
It's the perfect divide and conquer strategy. Some people don't see it, that's fine. Maybe you'll see it later on, whatever. But the fact that they brought politics into this, when again, there was people of every walk of life, Black, white, Latino, Jewish.
Yes.
Okay? So that wasn't, to me, when I was out in the streets, my main concern was to let people know that they were being lied to. They're being deceived, right? They are giving away their freedoms for safety, right? And then once you give your freedom for safety, you won't get it back. So it was just out of necessity to inform the public, this is happening. Please don't trust the government. It wasn't because, oh, I'm on the right side or I'm on the left side. At the end of the day, the goal was to unite the left and the right because it was needed. Because people need to understand it's billions of us on the planet versus about 2,000 and something elite groups. And to call them elites makes me want to throw up. But for the sake of conversation, so that people can understand what I'm talking about. And so, it had nothing to do with anything. And it was hard because people were even calling us white supremacists. People that look like you and I. Like, how did that even make you feel?
Exactly. When you said it, I mean, I was surprised because, one thing when they call it suffrage and conspiracy theorists, but I was shocked when you said it. You was like, we've been called white supremacists. I said, wow. So with this, the supremacy thing, and I think it says a lot about indoctrination, how we've been indoctrinated to think about, like you said, dividing what is white and what's black. White supremacy, black supremacy, all these things. You start to look at it and say, well, see, that's the problem. Now, anybody can be called a white supremacist. Anybody can be called black supremacist. Anybody can be called black or white. I'm calling a white person black. If that's what's going to happen now, like that's what with the indoctrination, that's what they did. They divided us to call these names and give us status. Now, we can just switch it over. So look at that. That's the mind, the brainwashing of the mind and indoctrination of the mind. And
conditioning people,
conditioning and programming us in so many ways.
Right, yeah.
We're doing it to each other. So the damage that we're doing, like the unvax and the vax, let's do it to each other. Let's point it like, okay, it's the doctor's responsibility to be responsible for our health. Now we're responsible for your health. Because we got to put the mask on.
Right, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? These are all that mind program that just happened. That's all it is. They're using us to do it to each other.
Right.
So it's crazy. Yeah.
And it kind of worked because, we had it rough in New York City. It was really bad.
Yeah.
The way people were just willing to discriminate, not allow us to go to restaurants. You got arrested. How many times did you get arrested? 1 or 2 times? What was it that you got arrested?
I don't think anybody know. I had got arrested when I went to court.
Okay, so talk to us.
When I went to the museum, and I got arrested when I was going to the court for that case.
Why?
Because of the fact that I didn't want to get my temperature taken. I said no.
They were doing temperature checks?
Yes.
Wow, I don't recall. I was arrested too, but I didn't have to do temperature check.
And I was trying to get the information so I can write it. They snapped and threw me in the cell.
Wow. This is really a live episode of Clown World.
I experienced that 2 times. 2 times I got arrested.
Right. So, well, the first arrest was because you were not vaccinated, correct? Can you talk about that?
Yes, when we was going to the museum with a group of, some of the freedom people, like, let's go to the museum. And, yeah, we tried to get in. And it was asking for the vax card. And we was like, well, we don't have it. And we walked in, and we stood our ground. We held the line until the cops came. And it got major, and I think there was like 3 of us. So that was crazy, because I was like, wow, this is reality. This is real life. Like, I can't go out and enjoy to see beautiful art exhibit because I don't have
And history is a museum.
history, education.
Wasn't it the Museum of History or something like that?
I think it was American National Museum, American Museum of Natural History.
History. But clearly, I don't know what was the purpose, because we don't learn anything from history, because if we did, we would not be doing this medical apartheid all over again, right?
Yeah, right, exactly, right?
So, wow.
History, right? Hopefully that would be in the museum. Okay, but yeah, because we wanted to go learn, educate ourselves.
And just live free, because prior to 2020 and 2021, you were able to go to these places with no mask and it was fine. You were able to go without then asking for proof of vaccinations to businesses that are operating open to the public.
Yes.
There was no need for you to show your medical record, because if a person that was HIV positive was denied entrance to a place like this, it would have been a lawsuit for discrimination. So now it's perfectly fine. Yeah, let's do I call it I was going to say Jim Crow law, but I call it Jim Covey law now based on vaccination status. So it's ridiculous. But let me ask you, did any of your family members oppose you? Did any of your family members say that you were crazy for doing that, for going to the protests and just refusing to put on the mask on the buses or whatever the case might be?
No, they didn't think I was crazy. They just know Jabal to be the righteous God. Like, she's righteous. You know how she stands up for her rights. And the reason why is because, again, I was always that person standing up for my rights anyway with the ADA rights from since prior, before COVID. Like, when it came to reasonable accommodation, accessibility, like going to events, organizations, going to school. When I went to school, I always had an interpreter. So everything was always like standing up for your rights. You know, they knew that side of me, but when it came to the mask, it was like, well, they was on a barrier. They were on a barrier like this. They're not like and they're like between my brother, he got me. He got me. My brother, he got me. But they make their choice to, wear the mask, and they know I won't.
Did you lose any friends?
They got quiet. They started not talking about it, not having a conversation with me. I made the choice to not stay in contact with them because I felt the vibe, I felt the energy, Like I said, that one person that I met, she spoke about it. She was comfortable to talk about it, to use her voice to speak on it. And me and her became close friends. Like, I never knew her. But the friend that I had was more into the entertainment, the acting. And I talked about it one time with one of the actors, but it seemed like she was for supporting it. Well, they have the right to here's their perspective. Well, they have the right to, ask you or demand you to put the mask on or anything. That's the end of the conversation with them. There's no further conversation to hear out what I'm trying to say, or I think it's more to them like, well, where's the facts? Where's the information? How do you know that? It's safe. Those are the conversations you have. It's just blank. It's not really open and really look at the picture bigger than what it is. It's not. So if you want to say lose friends, it's just distant. I distanced myself away.
And all of that came as a result because of what happened in 2020 with the lockdowns and the vaccine mass madness, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I figured, yeah. I saw a lot of that, like a lot of people, for the most part, the majority of the people that came here have have expressed that they lost friends, and a few of them lost family members. And I'm not talking about physically, as in like they didn't pass away, whatever. I'm talking about emotionally, and in a physical, in a way, only because of everything that happened. There was a distance physically as well, right? And it's just sad because you would think that in a situation like this, that your family members, your friends, and even sometimes coworkers will have your back. But apparently, the programming and the fear tactics that the government placed upon the people, and the way the newscast was doing that, having the tracker every day on the news of the amount of people that were dying, it really, really, really did. They did an amazing job on that propaganda. I must really say, especially in New York, when they had the signs that if you did not wear a mask, that you were disrespectful, you were a bad person. But if you put on the mask, you were being a respectful and kind person. Remember when they had the signs that this is bad, the mask, this is good. So it's just really, really sad. But also, I wanted to ask you, were you affected eventually financially? Because I know you said you were collecting unemployment at one point, but as time went by, I'm assuming your financial situation changed. Can you talk about that? You don't have to get into like personal, private details of like giving me an amount of like money that you have or don't have, but just can you dive into that?
Oh yes, when unemployment got cut off. Interesting. I did some savings. I had some savings from my job, and some investment that I did too, from my job and other things. But when unemployment had got cut off, I depended on my savings, and that ended up exhausting itself. Where it was probably depending on little things. Like for example, if I had a gig, so I was getting more like gigs, not a job. Not a full-time or part-time job. It was more like, oh, I have a gig to do. I'm going to go do this. It's like with the acting, a virtual acting that I did. I did a presentation. So it was little stuff like that, and I held on to my money. I was like, this was tight. So it was really a challenge. It was, look, I admit, my rent is backed up. That's how serious it is.
No, and
I've never
prior to 2020,
yes,
you were fine financially.
My rent is woo.
And you're not the only one. Like I know like other people that maybe they're not even being interviewed right now, but or will be interviewed, that I know that the rent situation, and not just for you as like renting an apartment for you to live in. I'm talking about also rent backed up for like the rentals that they have for their businesses. Like, you know what I mean? How they had to pay the rent. Yeah. So you're not the only one. A lot of people experience that. Nothing to be ashamed of, but it's just funny how they don't talk about that now, 2023. Or like, here, you can have your job back. You're not being discriminated against. Everything should be fine now. Like, oh yeah, let's just go get yourself a job because everything is just normal now. And, they will accuse you of being lazy and not wanting to work, but people didn't quit their jobs. The jobs were shut down. The government, as per the government's request, and I'm not even sure as to why people felt inclined to go along with that, because last time I checked, so I thought the government was supposed to be there to work for the people and by the people, but it seems like people have been brainwashed so much and for so many years through the indoctrination of the school system, entertainment, mainstream media, that people are incapable of thinking and questioning anything beyond what their TV screen is telling them. So people just folded and shut down their businesses. And I get it from a perspective, like, I understand that you were being deceived, you were being lied to, but that was your livelihood, and you allowed them to shut it down when the government has no right to do that. And in a court of law, if you were to go and defend and say, hey, the health department, since when do they make laws?
Exactly.
Since when do they make laws? And even if it was a law, you have every right to disobey unjust laws. Because if people didn't disobey unjust laws, right now we will all be in a plantation with chains
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's why the Constitution was put there, because it's letting you know that it's telling you whatever rules or policies or regulations or laws that they created, they could be unjust, and you let them know this is unjust.
Right.
You cannot do this to me.
Right.
You cannot do this to me. You do not have authority over me. That's the whole thing.
Unless you give it to them.
Right. You have to let them know you do not have authority. And I think, like you said, going back to brainwashing, is like the government has authority over us doing the jobs. Because it's a private, it's their entities. Technically, they don't have authority over you.
Right, they don't, unless you give it to them. And that, I think that's been part of such a huge cultural brainwashing, and people are so fearful, and people hate to be ostracized. Nobody wants to be ostracized.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be standing, on the side while the whole group is doing something else, because a lot of people can be alone. A lot of people don't know how to do that. Not all of us were meant to be leaders. Some people were meant to be followers. And I'm not saying that disrespectfully. It's just some people have a higher tolerance to things, and some people just are more rebellious by nature. I'm one of those people. I don't care if people hate me, ostracize me. You could do whatever you want, but I will stand alone and in my power and in my truth, even if it costs me my job, which it did, and even if it sends me to a jail cell, which it did for the first time ever. Like, you would have told me that I was going to be arrested for wanting to eat at a restaurant. You would have said that to me years ago, or for trying to go to a museum.
Yeah.
I would have laughed at you and look at you like you were crazy. Like you have 5 heads on your head. But it happened. It happened in New York City. It happened in other parts of the U.S. and outside of this country as well. I know in Europe, in the U.K., Australia had it really hard. In China, I mean, the Chinese have been domesticated to behaving that way, and even then recently started to rebel a little bit, and it's like, it's about time that you guys start rebelling.
They've been going through it for years, even before this happened with
right
us,
yes
so they became accustomed to it and so used to it, became a cultural thing, like that's their thing. And now, like you said, they're like waking up and realizing, like, communism and authority, medical tyranny, anything does not have power over us. You as a people, we as a people, that's the only way. We have that remedy to tell them, like, no.
Exactly. It's that simple. It's just like, no. And I think people overcomplicate things, right? Yes. It was as simple as people just saying no. That's it. I don't have to explain anything else. Why, how, what. No. It's a complete sentence. It's a no. That's it.
That's it.
So with that being said, what is your final message about everything that happened? What would you like people to hear or know?
I mean, it's been time. It's time for us to open your minds and receive truth. Stand in your truth, and especially for the deaf community, I need you to know that you need to leave room open and space open for those deaf people like me and others that have a voice, that have stood for their constitutional right, that have stood and spoke about this, and stand the right to stand in the choice that they make. Leave space and room for them to talk about it, to discuss about it. Let's talk about it. Let's come together and realize that you cannot depend on a system or government to do things for you. For many years, we have built a deaf community, we have built a deaf culture, and if you allow the system to take that away, then what do we have left? They had already done that with this pandemic, by taking something that's connected with our language, facial expression, connecting, communication. Leave room and space for those of us, and to speak on us. Let's talk about it. And also for the hearing community. It's anybody. Have these conversations at home. Because we've been going through this for 3 years. And where did it get us? It had got us to damaging families, causing divide, conquering divide continuously. That's all they do. It didn't do anything justice. It didn't do anything to bring something greater and better. The only way we can do something is for us to come together and say no. That's it.
Well, she said it. I don't have to say it. Thank you so much, Juju. I honestly, sincerely appreciate the conversation because certain things are uncomfortable to talk about, but it needs to be said because I have said it and will continue to say we can't just pretend like, oh yeah, this is over and forget about it, right? And even for the people that went along with this and now you're opening your eyes, I welcome you to explore this space and so we can have a conversation. But we can't move forward in life if we don't discuss the damage, how we hurt one another, how we comply with the system for so long because it's before 2020 that things were happening, and a lot of us were blind to the truth. So now it's out in the open, and again, in order for the issues in this world to be fixed, we need to talk about it and we need to heal in order to move forward. Before that, we can't just pretend like nothing happened because when you avoid a problem, it becomes bigger. It's not going to go away. And we shouldn't have to be avoiding problems. We need to have direct conversations and tell our stories how it happened and know that there's still people suffering from this. So I want to thank you so much for being here. And I hope that it reaches other people and that even others in your community, in the deaf community, can look at you as an example and as a leader and say, hey, she did it, I can do it as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.